welcome to the devlog. For those of you that don't know me, I am Gun to the Future, or Ben, from Hole in the Sleeve. I'm an unreal artist, environment artist. I'm not entirely sure what to call it at the moment. Kind of a little bit of everything on the art side. I've been meaning to make this devlog for weeks, maybe months now, but I've been very busy and it's been difficult to find the time. So we're out doing it today. Sorry for the audio quality, it's a bit windy. Wonderful English summer, but it's actually kind of perfect for the topic today, which is photogrammetry, which is why we need this grey sky. Because effectively what we're going to do is take hundreds and hundreds of photos of a spot and turn it into a photoreal recreation in 3D that we can drop in the game. So yeah, let's get to it. So the plan for today was to come to this spot, which is vaguely reminiscent of IMAX, because I'm going there tomorrow to do an actual shoot. And the plan was to come here and practice shooting this vague shape and also breaking a very large area down to smaller sections, because I think that's a problem that's come up in the past. Unfortunately, the sun keeps coming out, which means we get these really hard shadows on the road. So any model that does come out of this won't really be usable, because those shadows will end up baked into the textures and it will be incredibly difficult to get rid of them. Which means if we change the lighting in game, the shadows are in the wrong place. Which is why I wanted the grey sky, and unfortunately, it started to clear up. But, oh, let's give it a shot. Yeah, and then there's about another hour of that, so I'll see you on the other side. So, for the previous spot we just at, I only done half of it. It was mainly a practice shoot anyway, and the sun's coming in now, so it's going to really be pointless. So, I've done that. And on the way back, I saw this little beauty, with all of these railings and stuff. Just here, going up the building, and it's like really cool sort of stair set and stuff, and there's some aircon units in there that look awesome. Which would be a really awesome spot, and it'd be a really good like test and challenge, because it looks incredibly difficult to shoot for, because this is like such a tight space. This is maybe 7-8 foot across, and it's packed with railings and stairs and stuff. I can't get clean shots everywhere. Ideally I'd have a drone to take through here, but even then I think the drone might struggle with this little spot. The drone would be really good for these buildings going up, because obviously I can't get up high enough to take those shots. There is the scaffolding across the way, but it's obscured by this tree that you can just see poking through. I do really want to get this spot because it looks awesome. So I think I'm just going to give it a shot and trust the process. I don't know. See how it goes. It might come out terribly. I don't know. We'll see. So we are heading back now. We just finished that cool stair set railing type area. I didn't do all of it. I've done the stair set that I was on for the previous clip, and then shortly afterwards I started doing the floor going out, and the SD card was full, which I do have others, but that spot wasn't part of the reason for coming out today, and I couldn't be bothered doing loads more for a spot that more than likely won't come out very well, because it's such a difficult spot to shoot for. But I will run the process for the stair set and see how it came out. It was real awkward. I don't know, I think there's sections of it in the middle that are going to look really good, and maybe the walls on the edges are going to look really good. I think the outer third on each side is going to get lost, or melted or blurred or something out of line, things like that. It's going to be a bit awkward. But anyway, so let's jump into RealityCapture and start processing the images. Oh, right, so here we are. in RealityCapture, our software of choice for photogrammetry. I haven't worked out a script for this part of the video, so it's going to be janky and unsmooth. Have fun. And also, heads up now, the final product we get to, it isn't quite final product for a game. Close enough for the devlog. This isn't a real thing. This isn't going to get used in the pipeline. Might do. It's actually turned out all right. It needs some extra work, but it's time-consuming work for something that I haven't decided if I want to keep it or not. So I got it good enough for the video. So the first thing we do is, and excuse my whole Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier. It's such a long time-consuming process that it was easier to do it first and then go back and walk you through the steps. Especially since we'll get into it a little bit more later on, but it's difficult to predict exactly which steps I'll have to go through. So it's nicer and easier for me to do it in hindsight. So the first step is, we'd obviously have this as blank, like there'd be no model here, there'd be nothing loaded up here. And you'd grab all of your images and you literally just drag and drop them in. And you'll see this number populate. It will start on 0 and it will literally count up as it loads the images in. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to, in my case, 291, which is how many images we got. If I turn this on, you can actually see where I was for all the photos, which is really cool. So what we do then is basically just click a line. Typically, the default settings work fine. I have over time tweaked and adjusted them. The problem is they need a little bit of tweaking for every individual project. So I found that these are like my middle ground settings that works for most things, but they always end up needing just a little bit of tweaking. So the main things that I play with are the image overlap. I've gone from medium down to low, and the max features per megapixel an image I've bumped up. I think the defaults are like 10 and 20,000, and I've like thrown it way up. That's a big risk reward type calculation you need to do, because bumping those features, that feature limit up, means that my image quality is not going to be limited by what the software can handle. It will be limited by my PC's hardware, and in my case I've got quite a good build, so I can afford to bump this up. Also the same for this pre-selector features and detector sensitivity. Oh, actually that should be ultra, that should be high. That might explain some of the issues I was having. Fair enough. Check your settings, boys and girls. Lesson 101, learn from my mistakes, check your settings. So basically the way photogrammetry works is it takes an image. So let's use my godfather. What is the word? Coaster. There we go. So it will look at the image of it, and it will find a point, let's say like the tip of this mustache, and it will look at a cluster of pixels there and recognize the pattern that cluster of pixels forms. And then every other image, it will look for that cluster of pixels, and as it finds them, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm seeing the same cluster of pixels, but they've been skewed slightly, the perspective is twisted, but I know they're the same. And it's like, well, over a series of images, through using parallax, it can work out that there's only one solution for where that can exist in 3D space based on the movement of the camera. From there, it works out the position of the camera and the position of that point in the 3D world. It then does that for tens of thousands. That's what this max features limit is here. In my case, it mixes out 150,000 per image. So what it's doing is it's doing that very basic bit of parallax maths of working out where that position is in 3D space, and it does it for 150,000 points, or up to 150,000 points if it needs it, on every image. Across that, it can only come to one. It believes it can only come to one conclusion as to the position of all of these points on the model. The problem becomes, and this is a really good model to demonstrate it, sometimes it will get it perfect, especially if it's got really, really clear distinguishing points. Things like big concrete walls, like this, the Brighton wall that we use, where it's got the massive cracks in it and the railings and it's got the pipes on it and stuff. They're like super clear defining features that aren't repeated anyway. So it can be like, yes, I know with certainty this is here, build the thing out. With something like this, if I find a better image, this is one of the photos I took. You can see the walls got this like stucco plaster little stipply sort of texture, which immediately you can tell it's gonna struggle because it's seeing that same cluster of pixels, or it's seeing within its range of error, it's seeing that same cluster of pixels everywhere, and it can't tell the difference. So computers are really good at dealing with complex specific data, but it struggles with the whole image because it's not an AI based software. It's not taught to recognize what is and isn't part of the pattern. So as a human being, we can look at it and go, oh, these concrete tiles on the top are not part, but they're part of the whole scene, but they're a separate element to this stucco type wall. Like you've got the stucco type wall, you've got the concrete slabs on top, this is in the background, this is the curb, that's a separate element. And we can recognize that, but not based on any sort of pixel data. We do it on experience, on life knowledge, and the computer doesn't have that. All it's looking at is for data. So we feed it the images, set the settings, press align, and in my case, the first alignment came out like this. So also little point, I can't do it right now. When you align, it will show you it as a point cloud. Like literally all of the different points floating in space, which from a distance looks like a solid mesh, but as you zoom in, you can see that it's like just floating individual points. That will become solid when we model it later. But this is like a preview stage. And it's pretty good, you know, considering all of my focus was on this wall, it's picked up some of the road in the background, which is quite cool. It does good background stuff. It's even got like a decent understanding of the layout of the wall and everything. But as I turn the camera, we see this happening. Now in real life, from the experience of being at there at shoot, I know that this wall is straight. The whole thing might be on the piss at an angle, but in relation to itself, the walls don't get wider. They remain parallel the whole way, which is clearly not happening here. I have a feeling this is partly my fault. So we can see from these camera points, it looks like as I walked down, I started to curve my path back, which is probably because the wall started to get higher and higher, and I was trying to get that image, and I'm lifting the camera up more, and I'm leaning back a little bit. And I think every time I lean back, I took a little step, and I've curved my path. And because there's no identifying features for it to tell where the break is between the wall and the background, it kind of just follows the path I took, because it looks pretty consistent between the camera position and the wall. It just thinks that the wall's moving back because I'm moving back, which is my fault. And if I'd have not made that mistake, this would have saved me so much work. So I'm going to turn off these cameras quick, just so we can see it better. So what happens is it's got the right data and it's building all the right parts, but it's aligning them incorrectly. It thinks they're in different places. So this is where a thing called control points comes in. As you can see, here's 19, 20, 21 different control points that I already made. Most models, you don't need this many. You need 3, 4, 5 on a big model. This is a model that had a lot of repeating patterns, and the computer struggled with it a lot, and me messing up my path severely hindered that process. So what a control point is if we were to look at this image, for example, hello, we're back. So just before I load up the project, this is what it looks like when it's blank. Like nothing here, nothing in the inputs and that, it just says empty. When you drag and drop your images in, it will pop up. Here we go. So if we look at this image, a control point is you manually telling the software that this point should be treated as like an identifier to help tie it together. So you can see I keep doing them in these little joint bits. Basically, we go to so we come to tools, add control points, and we're gonna look in, and let's say we want to use this point on the P, and we click there. Let's come off this tool, point 22, which we do control points, come down point 22. Now I've got this camera highlighted in the 3D space, so we know that's the view I'm looking at. If I was to go to this camera, so different shot but of the same thing, we know it was this point here. So we drag point 22 and we drop it on that corner. Now immediately off 2 images, the computer will go, ah, I know what you're looking for. Bam, 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 bam. This is all the images that I think it shows in and where I think it should be. Now, the point of the control point is you've got to tell the computer it's wrong, and you've got to tell, not just tell it it's wrong, you need to correct it. So we go to this image, it lists all the one that thinks it can see it. So you just click on the image, you see point 22, that's pretty bang on. So green plus, this one, pretty bang on, green plus. I have a feeling they're all going to be bang on. This might be a bad example because this sign was never out of sync. This may be a bad example. Bang on. Yeah, that looks good. Looks good. Looks good. What's the like really what it's likely to have got wrong? Let's go really far back. Okay, yeah, here. So this is where I was stood across the way. So this path running here, I was stood on the opposite side with the camera zoomed in so that I could get like this face of the wall at a level shot rather than angled up. But obviously across that distance, you start introducing little bits of error. And it's a tiny little bit of error at the start across, I don't know how far it was, a few meters, whatever it is. That little bit becomes quite a big difference. So you can see that here, that it thinks this corner point is in the middle of the P. So what we do is we grab that control point and we just drag it over here and we're like there. And you can see here, pixel 2.6 pixels. That's the error that occurred. It's like, oh, okay, I was out by 2.6 pixels with my estimate. And then you'd go through and you'd do that for all of these. In some cases, I don't do this because I don't actually need this point. Pardon me. In some cases, especially on this like stucco and on these, if I go to 9, pardon me, like some of these, or for example, this one, I said 0.12. I said 0.12 on a different image, but the problem is it looks so similar to the rest of the texture, it couldn't tell what other images it should have seen it in. So I had to manually go in at like, look at this 0.12 and be like, I think this camera can see it. And like, okay, based on the rust pattern there, I know that it's up and left, so I know it's going to be that one, and it's on the right side. So the camera up and left on the right side. Okay, bam. And I'll go across the way, and I'm like, right, I see that same rust pattern up and across, up on the right side, bam. And I'm having to manually find and tell it that that's that point. Like I say, usually this isn't such a big problem. The main times I've had this issue was for floors, where it would get the whole floor right, but occasionally bits of the floor would just be out of line like that, and there would just be a chunk floating in the air. And it would be because I was stood at a weird angle, or the light hit it weird, or there was a jarring shadow, or something. And it's pulled it out of whack. So usually I only have to do this few. On this particular model, I had to do 21 of them, which is why there's so many components, because it was like, I'd do 2 or 3, I'd rebuild it. I'd do 2 or 3, I'd rebuild it. I'd do 2 or 3, I'd rebuild it. And I can actually flip through and take you through steps it went through. So this was the first one. This was the second one. Fourth, here we go. All right. I don't know why those ones didn't show in the middle. By the time we got to the fourth one, I'd made some pretty good progress on the corrections. And I believe at this point, no, it was further on. Okay. So yeah, at this point, we've made some pretty good corrections. I'm not entirely sure what was flagging up to me as being wrong here. I have a feeling. Oh, there we go. So you see this like patch of the concrete tile is floating above the wall, because obviously it knows what it is, it knows what the texture is, it's creating correctly, but it's aligning it wrong, thinks it's in the wrong place. So I had to go and correct that, and I'm pretty sure there's another version of it, yeah, here where it starts curving up. Oh, and a little one there as well. Don't know what happened with the curve up one. God knows how that happened, but here we are. So, what are we seeing on my webcam? What is above me? Oh! Sorry, I got really confused. My webcam cuts off here, and it goes into this black bar. I thought, because of the way it was lined up, I thought that black bar was like a shelf on the wall. I'm like, there's no shelf there. So it's been a very long day. We went down to London today, done a load of shoots for photogrammetry at IMAX. Unfortunately, the weather ruined it, so we drove into the National Theatre. But it's been a long day, traveling, walking. It's 10:15 at night when I'm recording this. I'm knackered. Bad idea, but hey, tired energy makes good videos, right? Gotta have that little bit of like hyper crazy in you. Anyway, so this became a case of just iterations. Control point, rebuild it. Control point, rebuild it. Back and forth. Putting out fires. At this stage, I started actually rendering the model as well, just to start testing it. But one of the problems we could see, if I zoom in, it's too much. But have I got a simplified version? View, no, view. Sweet. Right, so this is the thing as well. Once we've built the model, which, sorry, I've skipped a stage here. We've got the point cloud we were on before, so it looks like this. We can go to workflow and click calculate model, and what that will do is it will look at that point cloud and it will turn it into solid 3D geometry, but it will do it at the max resolution it has. And the default setting for RealityCapture says that if it's over 40 million triangles that compose the mesh, it won't render it as solid because it would murder your GPU. So it forces it into a point cloud. You have to simplify it down using this simplify tool and setting the target triangle count here to less than 40 million. I think, yeah, if you set like 39 or under, then you can render it as solid view, which if we go to view, and I like sweet. Solid does it without texture. Sweet does it with texture. I think, I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can see it starting to convert and the magic is happening. So this was the stage where I started testing turning it into models, because I thought it looked good from the point cloud, but it starts becoming difficult to see the little errors. So let me turn the camera quick. Like one error, for example, is here. The alignment on the blue circle was a little bit wrong, and it was like losing the edges, which I think off the top of my head, it was because there was like 2 or 3 images where this control point on the P, there was 2 or 3 photos where I hadn't put that control point on, and it was like ignoring them or skewing them, and it was confusing. And I need to go back and I just like correct that error from my point. So a couple things to point out. If it knows there's a gap in the model, i.e. it's got model this side, it's got model that side, but it doesn't know what goes in the middle, it will guess. It will just put a plane across it, flat mesh, and it will fill it in with blurry versions of the color from this side and the color from this side, and it will just guess. It won't put any texture on it. It will just be like, I'm winging it. What do you want from me? Which is what's happening here. Like, it knows it's got wall there, and it knows that somewhere down here it becomes pavement and becomes grey. It's like, I don't know what's between them. I know that there's an edge to this floor here, so I know it doesn't curve, and it starts to go up to that point. It's like, all right, I'll fill out the mesh going down. It's going to be flat-ish. I'll make it flat-ish, and I'll put the top half as red and the bottom half as grey, and somewhere in there it's going to be red. And, you know, it from the human standpoint, it seems like, no, but I mean, come on, that's the floor, that's the wall. Like, why would you merge them in the middle? The computer doesn't know that. It can't tell the difference because it's not AI. It's doing its best. It's trying. That's what the control points are for. And we're noticing the same error in the middle here, where it's like this bit of floor that's clear was getting caught in the background from up here. So it's like it's got a clear view of what that looks like, but I wasn't capturing this bit of the road in the middle. It doesn't know. It's winging it. It's like, I know there's this sort of like pattern going on here. I guess I'll try and mirror it or merge the yellow into the grey. Just getting it all wrong. It's a lack of information provided to it, and it's just doing its best. And if it really can't guess, if it can't fill in the hole, or if the hole's too big and it goes past the threshold, it just leaves the hole. You can also end up with this sort of melting effect where it's got a big chunk here and a big chunk there, and like the threshold doesn't cover the whole area, but it covers a little bit, and it's sort of bridged, and you get this like melting effect, which can look really cool. Anyway, I'm rambling. So yeah, I've gotten to the stage where the point cloud was a bit unclear as to where the errors were. I had to start making it solid so that I could see error here, error there. You know, in these cases, like the patches on the wall, I know that there's a camera covering it. I know there's multiple shots covering it, but the computer doesn't know. It can't work out where the pattern is to work out what part of which photo it should be looking at for there. So it's just ballparking it. So I know that I need some control points, aligning these cameras. I can't go in and look at this slipper pattern because I won't be able to find a pattern in there. So I need to do patterns for those photos to align them that I know contain this in the image, but aren't focusing on that because I'm able to find it. Hence, like this control point up here, it covers all of the images that this is in without me having to work out which bit bloody plaster I'm looking at. No, I mean, not plaster. That's in a house. Stucco. Stucco? Stucco? Stucco. Right. Tired. So anyway, back and forth, iterations. Name it again. Until we end up at this one, which I was quite happy with. Which looks really good. There are errors with it. This is also simplified down to 3 million triangles. When it comes to putting it into Unreal, in UE5, Nanite does a phenomenal job, like black magic level job. This is some voodoo bullshit going on, where it will take horrendously large meshes, millions and millions of triangles that would just murder any other PC. And as you get further away, it's like, oh, I don't need all 3 million triangles to cover this space. You can't see all 3 million. I'll render it 500. And as you move in, it's going, oh, the closer, I need a few more of those 3 million back, and it'll go up to 5,000, etc. Until you get into like here, and it's like, well, I don't need the 3 million because you can't see all 3 million. At this point, we'll render it at full resolution, but only for what's on the screen. So the 3 million still becomes 100,000, 200,000, whatever it is. Point is, it becomes a very manageable number for a GPU. There are some debates we're having internally at Hogsleeve at the moment as to how well that works on older graphics cards. So for those of you that have played 009 and 009A, 009 was the first version where we've had me, hello, on the team to start pushing the graphics. Because previously we've had primarily Dado and David working. Phenomenal developers, phenomenal coders, but they're not artists. A, it's not their job. B, it's not their expertise. And C, they got other more important stuff to be doing. David's climbing system. Mwah. Dado's vaults and locomotion system. It's had some issues, but it's looking good. And those are very difficult jobs. They're doing that. They don't have time for the graphics. They threw assets together. Happy days. It's a level we can play. Fair. 009 was the first version they've had me, and my whole job was graphics. Obviously, kid in the toy factory, I threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. Blew up most of our backers' PCs. Nobody could run the game. The highest quality builds could, obviously, RTX 3000 series, things like that. They were fine. I'm running an RTX 2080. So basically, anyone from that up was fine. Murdered everyone else's PC. 009A was the first stage of optimizations, which came out week ago. Start this week as of recording, so like 5 days ago this recording. And it was the first run optimizations where motor meshes together, utilizing nanite better, utilizing lumen better, whole load of mess things. I might actually make a devlog about it. That'd be a good idea. But got a load of performance improvement on a load of machines, and also got the lower builds to be able to play the game, which is awesome, which is a good start. However, we have noticed a significant difference in improvement, in performance improvement between the older cards. Basically, anything under a 2070, anything under a 2080 is getting less out of the improvements than anything above a 2080. And I think, and Dowdy thinks as well, that might be to do with nanite, because I'm utilizing nanite a lot. And the newer graphics cards can handle that process, they can run it. We think the older graphics cards can't as well. They're not utilizing it fully. They're not doing the calculations as quickly. They're not utilizing it at all. I'm not sure what, but there's been less performance improvement on the older cards, which is interesting. Potentially just means I need to break massive nanite models down to smaller things. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting off topic. This is for a different devlog. This would be a devlog about the 009, 008 optimizations. Back to this, nanite, we're not really limited by the triangle count. What we are limited by is the file size. And I've noticed that 5 million is big file size. It's like 200 meg-ish for a model, which is huge, massive, way too big, very unmanageable, annoying to check in using Git LFS, annoying to pull because it slows down the push-pull speed so much. Across an entire game, it's going to decimate the file size, make it impossible for anyone to download. Pointless. Bring that number down. Get it just to 3 mil immediately makes it a much more manageable number without that much loss in quality. Basically, we want to get it as low as possible without jeopardizing the quality, and it's just a little bit of a balancing act. There will be some actual maths and ratios going on, but it's a little bit of trial and error, basically. So that's what this has been rendered down. The reason you see 3 steps here is because this was the 87 million. Pardon me. And then this is the 70 million where I trimmed off all of the fat. So the way we do this is this box around the outside is called the reconstruction region. So click on that and we can grab these handles in and out. Now this isn't a great view, so let's make this to the top down view. And I'm literally, let's rotate that. Don't need to get it right, I've already done it once. Pulling these edges in. To something like that. And then we'd go to tools. I don't need to simplify time now. We want the box selection, which brings up this little dialog box. We want to select the triangles outside the box. Select. And we can actually see everything we selected. See, we can tell now I've pulled this edge in too much because I'm catching this wall. And what we'll do is then click filter selection, and it would delete all of the highlighted one and leaves the ones not highlighted, resulting in this model. But for above the 40 million, it can't render as solid. We actually saw the warning come up, which, there we go. You can't see it. It comes up saying not enough video memory, over 40 million, force the vertices. Simplified it down to 3 million in this case. And honestly, I'm quite happy with it. Because if we have a little run over. So these shadows, I mentioned it in the clip earlier. Heavy direct sun, shadows. These shadows become baked into the texture. Now, if they are soft shadows, we can do some Photoshop trickery to delight the images and to remove or minimize these shadows, make them not so noticeable, and get away with it. Strong shadows like this, where it's very hard line, very deep shadow, delighting it is ambitious. Ambitious to say the least. So the problem with this is it looks very cool here, but if we was to put this in Unreal, which I will shortly, and move the sun around, the sun will create new shadows, but this shadow will stay there all the time, and it will very quickly look odd. Unless the sun's in the right place, move the sun, it very quickly looks weird. Share that later. But look at the quality. Look at it. Look how... Oh god, I'm struggling. Ignore the melting. Like, look how good. Look how good it is. It's... I'm struggling with the camera. God, I'm having a... This. Look at it. Ignore that company. I'll blur the company up. It looks so good. Now, so these like... Sorry, I was really just losing my mind there. Photogrammetry is very cool. These like warpy bits, things like that, they're happening because effectively it's the same control point issue as earlier. It's creating the right thing, it's aligning it incorrectly, it can't quite tell where the images are and aren't based on the patterns. It can't quite recognize the difference between this concrete pattern here and this concrete pattern here because they're far too similar. The fix for this is to do a better job on the photography stage, where you get closer and you do an extra like super close pass, where it can really see the differences, where it can see like the granular detail. Time consuming. This was a practice and a test and just a case study for the devlog. I wasn't about to waste that sort of time, but good practice would be to do that. Once we've got the bad photo shoot, the fix is to do it with control points. Obviously, again, very time consuming process. It's less time consuming to do it at the photography stage, so fix it there. Whenever someone says, oh, we'll fix it in post, that person's an arsehole and they do not have artist friends. Do not make your artists fix things in post. It's painful. It's their job. They'll do it. They're good at it. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes you've got to do it. Don't rely on it. It's just mean to the artist. And you can't always guarantee good results. Like a lot of these, with time, I'd be able to fix. And I don't have to do a control point for every one, but I would probably have to do like regular intervals. So like, this is too big a gap with no control points. So I'd have to put maybe 1 or 2 here, maybe 1 there, maybe 1 or 2 here, maybe 1 here, 1 here, 1 there. It's a lot of work. But anyway, so we are going to go to workflow, export. Let me change my window to you can't see it, fortunately. So, boom, screenshot. It comes up with this menu. Screenshot it now. And we're going to export as FBX. It opens the standard like, hey, where do you want to save this file? Pick where you want to save the file. And default settings are fine. Unless you're getting into specialist stuff, you don't need to worry. Default settings. Go. Now, what's not going to come up here, so I can't take a screenshot because I've already done it, is the way RealityCapture works is the software is free and you can put as many images in as you want, and you can do whatever you want with the model. You can build it, render it, fix it, texture it, simplify it, repair it, whatever you want to do to it. But when you come to export it, you have to license the images, and I can't remember what the exact amount of money is. It's actually quite good. Like in this case, this was 291 photos, and it's based on the megapixels, not on the number of photos. So like the higher quality image, the more expensive it is. All of this was, I think, $2.50 or something for these 291 images and a super high quality model. So like £2. And you know, this is without me being precious with the images. If I had a budget to work to, I might be a bit more precious with the images, get rid of redundancy ones, you know, things like that. But yeah, let's jump over into Unreal and go have a look and see what it looks like when we get the modeling. Okay, so here we are in Unreal. I just very quickly made a new level, completely blank. So let's put some stuff in it so that we can see what we're doing. Let's drop a plane in, set it to word origin, set it to like 1,000, whatever, ridiculously large. Let's go to where is the environment light mixer, where is the environment light? There we go. And let's add a skylight, atmospheric light, atmosphere. Shit, let's go to town with it. You know what, let's go to town with it. And this looks very bright. My goodness, this is bright. Let's add some sort of texture onto here. Concrete of some description. This is gonna look weird. I just realized. No, this is not gonna look good at all. It's going to. Why is my recording not updating? No. There we go. Sorry, I'm not quite sure why the screen was blacked out. Also, I've got the window the wrong size, so let me just fix that quickly. I'm a professional. This is my job. I'm so good at what I do. Never made a mistake. I've never broken the door. Ignore this. This is hideous. No, mistakes have been made here. We find better material. Mega scan surfaces. It looks so bad. It looks so bad. Yeah, terrible practice. Don't do this, kids. I just very quickly needed to get something in. Why is the specular so strong? I don't know why they make the default specular so strong on the directional light. But honestly, like Blender does things like that as well. Like the default values for stuff are just like if you ever try to do loft sims and self collisions and stuff in Blender, the default collision distance is obscene. It's ridiculous. You have something like this, and it's colliding with like the collision box is like. Anyway, so now that that's all sorted, let's run back up to live here and find where did I save the file? Where did I export it? Why did I not plan this through better? Go to Devlog, Carpark Entrance, Carpark Entrance X. Oh my goodness. Oh, I just realised I'm a really bad YouTuber. Because I just made a mistake. I made a mistake earlier. I forgot to show you how to texture the model. Flashback. Hello. There is a certain amount of energy lost in my voice because it's okay. The OBS just crashed, and I thought I lost the last 40 minutes of recording. I didn't. It's all good, but there's a slight deflation that's happened in that moment. I will try to bring the little bit of chaotic energy back. So, anyway, I was going to show you how to texture because something's textured wrong in the file I exported. I just had a thought. I think it's because I exported it earlier, made some changes, exported it again, and I took in, I imported to Unreal all of the textures, which was, pardon me, wrong. So I'm going to delete them and start again. So here is the totally not flashback, totally doing it right the first time round. So you have your model, you've aligned your images, you've done the calculate model, you've simplified it down to a reasonable level, set your view mode to sweet so that you can see what you're looking at. I've realized you won't be seeing this with the texture on. Might be. No, you'll be seeing it all in grey. I am really bad at my job. Has this one been textured? Doesn't look like it has. Shears. Has this one been textured? They have been textured. Crap. See this one? No, because it's going to be. Doesn't matter. Doesn't work anyway. That's fine. That's totally fine. Okay. A little bit annoying. I'm losing my mind a little bit. This will be a grey model. Look like clay. Look like render. What we want to do is go to mesh model, unwrap, and unwrap properties and set your properties. In our case, we have decided that we want a texture size of 0.003. There is no, I can't remember why we chose that number other than it looks good. It was a lot of trial and error, and it became a trade-off between how good it looked, how efficient it was, how many 8K texture maps it made. Like, it was all of these factors coming in to find a balancing point, or in our case, 0.003 meters per pixel. That's what texture measures in, I believe, meters per pixel. Basically, it's how I'm going to give you a really bad description of what texel size is. It's to do with how much space is covered by how many pixels. It's the ratio between screen space, not screen space, between like the area of a surface and how many pixels covers it, leading to effectively resolution and quality of the image. That was a terrible explanation. But that's what we've got. So we want the maximum texture size to be an 8K map. You can set that to 16K if you're incredibly risk averse, 4K if you're a normal person, 2K if you're on a budget. Fixed texture size, which means we want across the board uniform texture size of 0.003. And we will then click unwrap, which will do the UV unwrapping, so it'll work how it wants to map the texture, and it will fill it with a checkerboard texture. I want to do it now because I don't want to undo the work, but it will fill it with a checkerboard texture. Once that's all done, we can click this down and it will say model textures, and it will be like 2 times, or it will be however many maps there are times this is the size they are. In this case, this whole thing is textured with 2 8K maps, which is bad. Like, it's fine, we can deal with that. So once that's done, we can't see it, and you literally just click the button texture. Boom, it will do it for you. I say boom like it doesn't take half an hour to an hour, it's a long process, but boom, simple. Simple. That's done. And then we end up with this, which is correctly done. I'm going to re-export this because, like I say, I exported it earlier, made some changes, exported it again. I've now got multiple texture maps, and I think I just dragged them all in because they were named very similarly and put them in Unreal. Why they weren't lining up correctly as to which is which. And redo this. So whilst this is going to finish exporting, I'm going to skip ahead in time. It's just finished. Never mind. We're going to go there now. Unreal, baby. We are back here. Oh, wasn't that a fun flashback to when I didn't forget to put that clip in? Anyway, so made another mistake here. Forgot to show you the import settings because they didn't show up on the screen. So Bam with the screenshot. This is what the import settings look like. This is what my import settings look like for Nanite. Yours will not look like this by default. I have changed a couple of things. The main things to change are build Nanite, and to import normals and tangents, not recalculate. If you let Unreal recalculate them, it will look wonky. You want to import them. So we've got our car park entrance. Oh, it's tiny. I need to go back and check my settings. I'm not sure if I might have had the scale set wrong. Just bring that up, so I guess I'm at 30. I might have had the scale set wrong, or it might have been scaled incorrectly in RealityCapture. I think more likely I set the scale wrong on the input settings because I didn't check, because you shouldn't do work when it's this late at night and you're tired. It's bad juju. Don't do it. So what's happening here with all of these thingamajags is an Unreal issue currently, where ray tracing doesn't work with Nanite. So Nanite has a thing called fallback mesh, which is a very, very basic spare bones version of the model, which it uses for optimizing. Unfortunately, when you use ray tracing shadows, they only calculate the fallback mesh, not the current mesh being viewed. So all of these triangles come through. This problem needs to be fixed. For now, the workaround is to use this command. Problem is, it damages all the shadows in your scene, which is quite frustrating. This is definitely not big enough. Let's select 50. That's looking closer. It's actually more like that. Let's just leave it at that. Let's go bring the textures in. So we are going to create some materials. I'm just going to call them new material and material 1. Drag it in. Ideally, in a final pipeline, we wouldn't do it like this. We would use the Megascans preset master material, because it's got a lot more controls. In fact, no, do you know what? This is, why am I showing you the bad way? Let's show you the right way of doing it. So let me go find, where is it? Levels, theater, floors, material instant, copy, back to levels, nope, back to live. Here we go. Car park entrance 1, entrance 2. Nice. And the reason we use material instances is because it's a lot more efficient rather than having a brand new material every time. An instance means the graphics card will be like, this is the same rule set. All right, we're just doing slight little tweaks. So I'll copy and paste the same rule set, I do the calculations a lot faster, and it will just make the slight little tweaks it needs. So we'll go in and we'll switch out the albedo for that, and for CE2, switch out the albedo for that one, and then I would set it in the static mesh modifier, but I don't care at the moment. I'm going to drag this onto it. Can no material. Oh, because I dragged the texture. Drag it on. Right, that's in the wrong place. So I'm pretty sure it goes on the other one. Here we go. And this one goes there. Hey, there we go. Now, let's grab the sun. Swing the sun around. Something like that. This is some incredibly strong shadow. What is... So this is interesting. It would appear this model isn't as good as I thought it was in RealityCapture. I believe. No. Something's going on here. Jeez. I'm going to re-import this quick. I think something's gone wrong. That box. And then... Hello, right, sorry, while I was trying to fix, I made a couple changes. Whilst I was trying to fix that, I realised what the problem was where I'd made some changes and re-exported, I was importing the old model, which is why it wasn't lining up right and looked weird. Also got rid of the floor because it was annoying me. And on these material instances, I had this tint on, which you see is making it way darker, which is an artifact. Ah, you can't see the menu. Basically, on the materials, there's a tint option, which was being used on the one I copied it from. Didn't want it on this one, turned it off. So this is what we've got. Move the sun around. Whoops, daisy. Let's move the sun around a bit. Bring it back this way. It's up middle of the day. Right, look how good it looks. Look how good it looks. There are errors, so this is where it was like a bit melted, and obviously that bits need fixing. There is also quite sharp points which it would need to go through a smoothing pass, which again in RealityCapture, where you've got the simplify tool, there's also one called smoothing tool. Go get smooth, sorted. I have to play with the settings a bit, a little bit of trial and error. That's basically it. And yeah. We've got this in game. And look how good it looks. That is effectively the process of how we get models into Unreal. There's a little bit more involved in it, like I say, smoothing passes to fix some of this stuff. making sure that the photos were done well at the start, using the correct amount of control points. Gets a bit more complicated for things like railings, because typically railings don't survive photogrammetry because they're either too reflective and the software can't work out what it's looking at, or they're too clean, they're too flat, they're too smooth, there's no identifying marks on them, there's no scratches, there's not enough dust, and again, it can't tell what it's looking at, it's just a black void. So it puts nothing there. Happens. But yeah. And just before I leave you guys, let's jump back over to, ooh, look at that sunset sun. Oh, that looks good. God damn. Sorry, I'm in love with like the photogrammetry at the moment. Let's jump back over to RealityCapture quick and just see what the stair set looked like that we tried to do. So here we are, back in RealityCapture again. Back to reality. This is the stair set that we saw in the previous clip that I was just going to take a look at, see how it went. It came out all right, to be honest. This hasn't been fixed. This is just images in aligned. Haven't got control points, haven't like whatever. So you can see what I meant just now about the railings have like melted because it just doesn't know what it's looking at. Some of them, it's got dirt on it and that, and it can tell. And like on the guttering, because it's plastic, it's less reflective, it's got more scratches, it's got more dust on it, it can recognize identifiable points, it can rebuild them. But like, that's pretty sick, to be honest. Like, look at it, look at the moss, look at the aging, look at the weathering. It's disgusting and I love it. Sorry, I get very enthusiastic about this. But even like the stones and the pebbles are really good. And this is, you can see like, I didn't really have a plan for it. I kind of just scattershotted it and tried to get as much as possible. And honestly, it's done a pretty good job. This is 217 images. It's managed to align 213, which means 4 photos it couldn't work out where they were, what they were looking at, and it's failed. Control points would probably fix that. But yeah. So hopefully this video has it's been way longer than I expected. I'm going to trim it down. This is a long recording. I need to cut sections out. But hopefully this has given you guys a little bit of insight as to process photogrammetry. This particular example, I was going to say went smoother than the others. It didn't, because there was a lot of control points that needed to be used. But I've got more experience. I think a lot of the problems come from me doing the photography stage incorrectly, inefficiently, lazily, things like that, and just not having experience, and I'm learning. The more and more experience I get, the better I get at the photography stage, the easier this software stage becomes, and I'm noticing that as well. Something like this would be a nightmare to process because there's no hope in hell the railing's going to survive. There are 2 things you can do. You can use a polarizing filter on your camera to kill some of the reflections, or a lot of reflections to be fair. And that you can use like some sort of wax or like dust and like manually dirty up the railings so that they're identifiable points on them. But then you are introducing some fakeness to the materials. How good can you do that fakeness without it looking weird? Can you use wax without seeing these massive smear points on it? Or I would then have to take this model out, maybe do it here, depending on how awkward it is. It's a bit awkward to select like these bits because there's no great tools for it in RealityCapture. You've got like a lasso, but I can't lasso that because it gets everything behind it. So it becomes very difficult. I can manipulate this box around to like try and get the railings, things like that, but it's a pain in the ass. I prefer to take this out into software like MeshLab or into software like Blender. I don't use or have ZBrush, but something like that. And in a different 3D software, tear out these railings, replace them with railings in the same place. Keep all the stairs and the brickwork and everything in that, because that looks awesome. yeah. So yeah, I hope this gives you guys a little bit of an insight, and I don't know how to do outros, so papa.